Well, welcome everybody. This is Greg Andrick, and it's the Business Freedom Conversation live stream. So here at the beginning, let me just say a few words about why we call everything the Business Freedom Conversation. So LinkedIn ran a survey a few years ago and asked small business owners what was the number one driving force for you to have your business. And 4 out of 10, 39% said freedom. And that was almost twice as much as the very next category, which was to share my gifts with the world, 22%. So here we are coming up with things to help you enjoy and keep your freedom as a small business owner. So today's show is critical to you having success and good relations. Today, we're going to cover the 6 things that everybody faces that causes, some people it causes success, but pretty much causes stress and causes you to react in a way that if you don't control these 6 stressors, 6 triggers, 6 things that influence your behavior, then you don't have the success, the relationships, because at the end of the day, running a business is maintaining multiple relationships at the same time. And that when things enter that relationship, change in the economy, an employee quits, a customer comes on, you change the price with a customer, anything that happens in a business involves the relationship with you, your customer, your employee, your vendor. And it requires a certain number of interpersonal skills that you use to get what you're hoping to get out of that relationship. And usually it's a two-way thing. And the first step to being successful with the things that trigger you is identifying them. So let's start here and go over what the 6 triggers are. So the very first one, and you may not think that this triggers you, particularly in your business, but you're going to be amazed when we look at it, and it's not completely what you think that it is. It's spiritual, mental. That one's obvious, how you use your mental faculties, how you keep them effective. Emotional. Now, everybody knows this one, because this is the one that usually gets the train off the tracks. Physical. I think it's interesting in the business world that where people put physical, and my personal opinion is that by and large, physical is not put high enough in the priorities. Business is almost like a sport. You got to be prepared for it physically. Social, that's a huge one, particularly today. So many social mores are changing. We're going to go over some of that, and it's how you interface with that will determine the outcomes of a lot of your interactions. And then the last one is environmental. And environmental can always be an extremely difficult. And one point I want to make here, and if you saw the ad for this, you may understand this line. Multiples of these, if not all of them, can happen at the same time. Ever been divorced? You may hit all 6 of these at once. So I'm going to start off. I've got a little clip that starts with each one. And it runs about 15 to 20 seconds and kind of sets the tone for how we're going to talk about the next step.
What's that?
That's a Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right.
So there you have Jimmy Stewart, and probably his most famous role we all watch every Christmas. And I thought it would be appropriate to start with an angel gets its wings every time a bell rings. So spiritual may not be totally what you're thinking about, but the first element of spiritual are goals. You pretty much need to know who you're about and what you're about. and determine where you want to go. It's like you would never get in your car, or maybe you do on a relaxed Sunday afternoon and just kind of drive around. But when you go on a trip, you've got a destination. That's no different than your life and your business goals. They're critical to your spiritual outlook of how you function in this higher emotional plane of spirituality. Vision. Vision is critical to being able to see the reality of where you are and to help shape it. And people have things happen to them on this spiritual plane, and without a clarity and a vision, you can get lost, and you can not be effective in your interactions with others. Values. It's what you're about that matters at the end of the day. So combining your goals with your vision and your values and defining that, knowing where you are, helps you. We're going to get into some other things where these relate, and sometimes two of these triggers, these influencers, connect with each other. But after goal and vision and values, then this is the big one. And this is like I said, 39% of people want more freedom to run their own business, but 22% of you said the driving force was to share your gifts with the world. What is your purpose? And along with your purpose comes your passion. This is why it's under the spiritual guideline, because when we were more, say, religious and less secular, a higher percentage of people went to church. And what was it about going to church or the synagogue or the mosque or wherever you get your spiritual value? It's this purpose. What are we all about? What is the main thing that I'm here for? And that's even more critical, I believe, in the business environment. So then the last one was what makes it all work together. That's alignment. Like, how do all of these align? And that's where the trigger comes in. When you're asked to do something that doesn't align with your goals, your vision of how you see things the way they should be, your values, what do you value above? What are your priorities? And your purpose? What am I about? What am I trying to accomplish with my business and my life? And alignment part of this is what creates the stress and what you need to be under control. Now, I've put a link in the chat, and if you want to talk about this with me, that link, you click on that and you can register and we can talk about this, because when you start identifying these things, what the next step is, how do when I identify what's happening to me, how do I react in a way that aligns everything with my goals, vision, values, purpose? And that is true with all of these triggers. So this is what it is for the spiritual one. Let's go on and take a look at the next clip that I put in here.
Oh man, there's no problem. It's cool.
It's cool?
Yeah.
Cool. Fucking damn right it's cool. How you like me now? My boy's wicked smart.
Mental. My boy's wicked smart. That's from Good Will Hunting, where Matt Damon plays a genius. The mental one is interesting, particularly in business, and I don't think it gets a high enough attention. So the first thing that starts in mental is how alert are you? When you're running your business or you're working somewhere, the first step is alertness. Are you prepared? Are you ready for the work? When something comes at you, what's your response rate? How do you react to people? Your alertness as to what's happening. And that's critical in the mental area, because being alert is what allows you to put your resource with whatever the stimulus is that comes at you mentally. So these three things, attention, focus, and concentration, these are the things today with all the social media, all the emails, the text, all these different things that affect your mental triggers. And for example, you can be alert and you're ready for, let's say, a prospect enters your business, but then you get a text and you get distracted with the text and you lose the connection with the prospect that walks in. That's why concentration is part of this and focus. A big part of the whole mental trigger is when something comes along, what is your attention, what is your focus, and what's your concentration, and will you alert to recognize that it came in the first place? So awareness, different from alertness, is what is going on. This one of the mental aspects may be the most critical one in business, because things aren't always the way they appear, and people do things to get a certain reaction, and awareness to what the circumstances of the situation is critical. And again, it's not easy to learn how to react in such a way that it's beneficial to you when you've been triggered in the mental area and somebody's distracting you or playing you in a way. It becomes important to use the awareness. Memory, and this is a big one in two ways, because a lot of memories can create limiting beliefs and false assumptions, and they can then create an issue mentally with you of how you respond to the situation. That's where awareness comes in. That's where alertness, attention, focus, and concentration also come in. Putting all these together helps you to react in a way to a situation that occurs where the outcome is more in line with where you want to be. And all of this leads to your intuition. I think today, in the digital area, digital age, I should say, intuition isn't as valued as much as it used to be. We used to be a much more mystic culture because we didn't understand how everything works. And with a more science age that we live in, I think people are devaluing intuition, and that's a shame, because intuition, what will drive you in the direction you really want to go, where again, the problem with all of these triggers is you have an inappropriate reaction to your situation, your values, the goals you have, and you wind up not getting the results you want. And it's intuition that can drive you. Then the last thing, when you match all these together, you're going to have clarity of the situation. And this is probably the most difficult one to get. But I think when you recognize what all these attributes are of the mental trigger, then you're going to get the end results here, which is clarity. You know, what is really happening and what's my best reaction given all of the circumstances in what I'm trying to accomplish. Then when that happens, you're centered. Now, trust me, it takes practice to become centered, because that means you're able to, with all these other stimulus, with all these other things going on around you, you're able to stay on course. That's what centering means, that you're centered as an individual. Mentally, you have all these other attributes: alertness, attention, awareness, memory, intuition, and clarity, and that causes you to be centered. It takes a lot of practice to get to this point, and a lot of understanding who you are. So the next one is emotional. Let's go on my little clip that's here for emotional.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
So, emotional. That's a famous scene of Albert Finney in the movie Network. Who hasn't felt that way? When some emotional stimulus, emotional is the hardest one to control. And it takes, again, like I said, it takes more practice, takes more knowledge. Really, knowledge brings you probably the serenity you need to guide through things that trigger you emotionally. And that's where awareness comes in. Just like we were talking that in the mental side, it's even more critical in the emotional. The first question being, what is happening? And not to say that out loud, in your mind. So both mentally and emotionally, you see how these things combine? You're going, what is happening? What you're aware of the stimulus. And that's the critical first step of dealing with the mental trigger, the emotional trigger rather. The next thing is your expression. controlling your expression, knowing the appropriate expression. Don't we all know 93% of communication is non-verbal? Your body language, the tone, the emphasis, those are all key. The twist of one word, maybe the correct word, but how it's delivered can completely change a situation. I know all of you have experienced, I've experienced it. The key as a business person to be successful is to be able to be aware of what is happening and that your expression is controlled in a way that it delivers the message that gets the results that you want. And that's control. This is the hardest one for all of us to do, because when something really hits our value on the nose, it's like getting all of a sudden a toothache. The pain just goes all the way down to your nerve and you're just jerked out of your socks and you're trying to figure out what to do. That's where control comes in. And again, this takes practice. This takes acknowledging what the elements are, knowing when those elements appear, what they are, and how to appropriately react to them. Again, all of these things of these triggers is to know about it, so when things happen, you are, again, under control. It's critical, particularly like I said in business. Attachment to outcomes. This isn't what you think it might be on the first surface. What it's going to get you is when you release your attachment to outcomes. That's why when you rise to a higher level and all of these things are for interactions with other people, and you have an interaction with somebody else, whether it's your customer, your employee, your vendor, your landlord, the government, whatever it is, that your attachment to the outcome is not so rigid that it triggers and blinds you to the awareness, ruins your expression, and keeps you out of control. And again, this thing takes acknowledgement, understanding, and practice. Shifting emotions. So what this is learning how to shift your emotion when a certain stimulus hits. And this is another thing that takes a lot of practice and self-analysis. To analyze yourself and know where you are in these situations is very, very critical, because then you can shift your emotions. This isn't like your emotions are just shifting out of control. You're trying to control the shift in your emotions. And you can do that more easily when you aren't rigidly attached to outcomes, that you're looking at whatever comes to you on an emotional basis is an opportunity to guide yourself into a new place. It's when you get rigid that this is a more powerful trigger, and usually a negative trigger. Turn it to a positive one by being aware of what's happening, learn how to control your expression. There's control again. Have the appropriate attachment to the outcomes, and realize that one outcome isn't the only appropriate outcome. There can be others, and the other ones might be even better. And then shifting your emotions within that stimulus. So here's the next one, physical. Let's go and look at this.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. We must be over the rainbow.
We must be over the rainbow. I use this one for physically because we're not in Kansas anymore. How famous is that statement? I'm sure all of you have probably used that at one time or another when a circumstance has changed, when a physical circumstance has changed. And I had another one. I was going to use Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical, but I couldn't get some of the things in the video to work. But physical, this is the one that I think in business is extremely underrated, because I believe to be successful in business is just like being successful in sports. You have to be physically capable to perform. And that starts with your health, to do the things with your health, to check up on your health, to make sure you go to the doctor, the dentist, whatever you need to make yourself be healthy. If you're not attending to your health, you're going to have a problem. And that when you don't attend to your health, it makes the other stressors, like the emotional one, the mental one, and the spiritual one, and a couple more I'm going to show you in a minute, have a greater impact on you, which they might not have had you had in better health. So the next one is sleep rest. And this is there's more and more in the health press about sleep and rest because this is critical for you to perform. If you're not getting enough rest and you're not getting enough sleep, your performance slowly goes down. So it's important to acknowledge that hard work isn't the only thing that's important. Your sleep and your well-being, and again, like I said, your health is critical. And to understand this and to prepare yourself almost like an athlete for your business to be able to take the things that come at you. Nutrition and hydration. Nutrition and particularly hydration is extremely undervalued. And there's more and more coming out about hydration. And if any of you have had to deal with a relative with dementia, my mother had dementia. So I started reading all the articles about dementia. And dementia, they're flipping back and forth between whether it's a type 3 diabetes or not. So that means your diet and how much sugar is in it. But an interesting thing they found about dementia was the level of hydration was critical. To keep people who stayed well hydrated, they said as small as a 3 or 4% drop in hydration can be a supplement to bringing on dementia. Well, when I heard that, I'm like, all right, I have a glass of water on my desk at all times. But these things are critical to be aware of. And that's the theme that goes through all of these triggers and influencers, is being aware of them as they're happening and having the appropriate response that's in line with where you want to go. This is another one. Supplements. Not all supplements are good, or maybe you need some. And then drugs. We live in a drug culture. Almost 1 out of 4 Americans uses illicit drugs. And 33% use marijuana. These things are going to affect how you react with these triggers and how you perform in your business. And of course, alcohol, it plays a major part in that. If you use alcohol near any time in which you're doing business, as well as drugs, I'm not so sure about supplements, but some supplements are pretty powerful. It's going to affect your performance. It's going to affect your interaction with the people you interact with. And business is all about interacting. If you go to lunch and have alcohol at lunch, your performance will probably drop dramatically. And, that's just a fact. So it's important to acknowledge what you're doing. And if you don't like your performance, look at your physical side and see, what do I have to improve so that I hit my goals, do the things that I need to do on a timely basis. And you can only pretty much do that effectively if you're looking at these aspects of your physical influencers, your physical characteristics. This one, so there's a book I highly recommend that's called Breathe. And it wasn't written by a scientist. It was written by somebody that went back in about 5,000 years. He looked at all sorts of ancient cultures, both in the Middle East and in South America, as well as our Western European cultures, of how they treated breathing. And there's a lot to do with breathing. And there's a guy out there, I believe his name is William Hoff, that can walk barefoot on ice that's like 20 below zero and not freeze because he controls his autonomic nervous system. Breathing is rising to the forefront. And in places like orthodontia, where they were reducing the size of people's mouth to make their teeth look pretty, and they're seeing how it's affecting their breathing and then lowering their performance. So this is a really critical one, breathing. Then exercise mechanics. Well, I think maybe just exercise. Getting into a routine where you have some level of exercise, at a minimum just walking, will greatly improve your physical and business performance. And the last one, image and appearance. What do they say about first appearances? They're critical. And taking care of your appearance and your image is critical to your success, particularly in developing and starting relationships. So the next one is social. Let's look at my next little thing on social.
I'm not your wife or your mother or even your mistress.
What?
I am your employee, and as such, I expect to be treated equally, with a little dignity and a little respect.
What do you mean?
Okay, we got a little bit of ahead of ourselves. You're going to like that last one. So social, boy, has this come to the forefront now. It's a new age we live in. The amount and type of social interaction Social is the one nobody wants to go back to the office, and everybody wants to stay at home because they're able to control the amount and type of social interaction better at home than they were at the office. This is the key, and it's important to recognize how these social interactions affect you in your relationships and how you deal with people. Now, a catabolic is destructive. So dealing with catabolic relationships, those are people that are negative. Those are people that tear down what you're doing and give you problems. Dealing with those is critical in the social environment. There's techniques to do that. Again, if you register, we can talk about it. The ability to communicate. Boy, does that sum up how you react to people. How do you communicate with them? Well, knowing all these triggers and knowing whether more than one is happening at a time, knowing the elements of them will give you a greater ability to communicate and have a more effective communication where the situation goes in line with what you're trying to achieve. In business, we're always trying to achieve something. You know, in nonprofit, we're trying to deliver an outcome. In business, we're delivering an outcome and trying to make money. So those are two interesting things. Creating your anabolic support team. Anabolic, you've heard of anabolic steroids. Anabolic is growing, developing, supporting. So create your support team. It's one thing to have a mentor, but you also need peers that you can talk about your situation with. It's part of that amount and type of social interaction. Creating a support team will help you get through social interactions that you're having difficulty with or wanting to know how to react on. Here's a last one, environmental. Let's take a look at what my thing here is on environmental.
Oh my God.
It's gone. It's gone.
Where's my truck?
I'm sure all of you have felt like you've had a day where your truck is like dropping out of the sky, right? So that's from the famous movie Twister. They hid under the bridge while the tornado went over them, but it sucked her truck up and then dropped it down on the road in front of the male character's fiance, who was a psychologist. So environmental, this one's really important, and this is one that becomes critical to control. It's what are the conditions you're doing business under? And those dramatically affect your performance and how you react with others. The settings. What is the setting that you are performing in? It's important to know what the optimal setting is for you. It's different for everybody. And it's important for you to know. You could be completely unsuccessful in one setting and extremely successful in another. It's important to identify that, know what that is, and make sure you're delivering that. The environmental is kind of like physical. Where at physical, you have to make sure that you're prepared to work, you're ready to work, you're strong enough, all that kind of thing, you're healthy enough. Environmental is the same thing, is having what you're doing, the place where you're doing it, be good for you, that you can perform well. Equipment and clothing. This is critical. If you don't have the right clothing, if you don't have the right equipment, you're not going to perform at your peak. It's all about wanting to perform at your peak. Adapting to change, to a changing environment. Isn't this one we all have to deal with like constantly? The world is moving so fast now that being able to adapt is critical. Is you know, the probably the number one thing you're going to have to do in environmental, because look, we had a pandemic, you're working in the office, you're not working in the office anymore, they then want you to come back, and then you can't control the better environment you created by being at home, where you were able to control your interactions with other people. So there you have the 6 triggers, influencers, the elements of them which are critical to know. Again, I've put my link in there. All you got to do is register. We can talk about it. I've got some materials I can give you so that you can refer to that. And all of this really brings up the fact that being a business person is very much like being an athlete and having to recognize all of these elements, all of these things you see in sports. Everybody loves sports. And when you look at sports, you're going to see all of these different things, including the spiritual, which you might not think would be in sports, but it's in business. And that spiritual may not be what you typically think of as spiritual. So I've brought these things to you. I hope you enjoyed this. Use them to your advantage. If anybody wants this slide deck again, just contact me at that link that I put here. I'm also going to put the link in the post on LinkedIn. And this concludes our Business Freedom Conversation live stream. And I'm here to help you be successful and that you keep that freedom going and that you build your freedom, because that's what 39% of you said is the number one thing of having your business. Well, if you don't react to your triggers appropriately, then you lose that freedom. So next month, we're going to have, there's 10 ways you react to these triggers and stimuli and influencers. We're going to do 5 of them in the month of December. Now we're getting down to how do you make this work for you? But as I said, it takes practice, it takes knowledge, it takes you doing the work. We're consciously making choices and understanding what it is that you want to do. Isn't that what it's all about in life? Being able to do what you want to do? Again, that's your freedom. So this is Greg Andruch, Business Freedom Conversation live stream. Thank you for watching. I will catch you on the next one. And this is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year on my YouTube channel, Greg Andruch, Business Freedom Conversation on YouTube. Thanks. I'll see you next time.